Hello, my name is Bob Ganzak. Welcome to MotivationU the Podcast. Welcome to MotivationU the Podcast, coming to you live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill here at Celebration Point inside the coach's podcast room. I haven't seen the coach around here lately. With me today is a guest. I've really dreamed, maybe that's a strong word to use, but dreamed about having this guy on the show for a long, long time. Mr. John Spence, coach, leadership guru, business advocate.
I don't know if guru is the right word.
I've read
Guy
it.
that copied your haircut.
Yeah.
I had long hair until yesterday, but I knew I'd be on, so shaved it off just to make sure
That's a fist bump moment. We might need more than 1 hour for this program today because kindred spirits here. We are so alike in so many things we do, what we achieve, what we try to get other people to do.
Yeah.
Yet we're a lot alike in our own worlds.
This is true.
So, welcome, John. Glad you're here.
Thank you, Bob. I'm happy to be here.
And as we start this journey today, where did it start for John Spence?
What part of the journey?
The very beginning.
Miami, Florida, and grew up. My father was a very famous malpractice attorney. Have you ever seen the show Matlock?
Yes.
It was based on my father's life. And went to prep school down there. And we'll get to the fun part of the story here. Graduated, got accepted to a lot of different colleges. I chose the University of Miami because it was close to the beach and my girlfriend. Not the reason you choose a university, which is why I failed out a semester and a half in. And which was especially fun because my father was one of the top alumni ever to graduate from the university. They have a thing called the Order of the Iron Arrow. It'd be like being a bull gator here.
Wow.
Also, he was on the board of directors the year I got kicked out. And part of the law school is named after him. So my journey began not very successfully. And I moved up here to Gainesville, tried to get into U of F. They literally laughed at me, literally when I handed them the transcript, like, we don't take people like you. And I got into Santa Fe, went to U of F, turned things around, and graduated number 3 in the United States in my major.
Wow. So, which was public relations.
Public relations.
At
Very
School
impressive.
of Journalism.
Yep.
Journalism.
Yep.
My daughter graduated, my daughter graduated from the School of Journalism 2008.
Wow.
So, and my stepdaughter just graduated this past May. So that was
89. Now I feel really old.
Yeah. Amazing when you start thinking. I start thinking to myself, my daughter's been out of college for 14 years.
Oh, well, you and I were talking. You and I have been doing this sort of work for 35 years. That's scary.
So Gulliver Prep School,
Yep.
right? What was that experience like? Because you were in the same school for like from 72 to 82 or?
Kindergarten to graduation, I was what they call a lifer at a prep school. And it was a bubble. I grew up in a bubble. There were no diversity, all wealthy white families. Part of it was great because I was protected. I knew all my teachers. They took good care of me. Everybody knew I only had maybe 12 people in my classes. My graduating class was 64 people who probably 54 of them I had been kindergarten all the way to graduation. So in one thing, it was a very safe environment. It was a pretty rigorous school. It's one of the top prep schools in the country. But by the same token, I walked out of there with no exposure whatsoever to the real world. Everybody I grew up was, wealthy, and we hung out each other and walked out and went, oh, things are different when I get to the university. Another reason that I didn't do well on the first try.
Yeah, that when this program is all about leadership, really. The leadership of trying to find individuals that make a difference in people's lives. So you don't have to be a Gates or a Buffett or any of those names, Elon Musk. I think some of our greatest leaders are living next door to us, making a difference in people's lives at Dollar General.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's what we try to uncover. And yet I find that many of us form a lot of our leadership passions when we're real young.
Yeah. It's interesting. Somebody asked me in another interview, when did you start to realize you could be a leader? And it was in high school, Gulliver Preparatory, playing football my senior year. And I was pretty good, but I'm a big guy, I was a defensive lineman and all this stuff. And my coach came to me and said, my nickname in high school is Bear. And he said, Bear, I'm going to make you I'm going to make you the captain of the defensive team. And he said, on one condition, you have to come in the top 5 in sprints and all running exercises for the rest of the year. I had never come in the top 5, top 10, top 20. I was that guy dragging my butt, at the very last when they sent us around the track for a mile or whatever. Oh, yeah, I basically walk. And the next day I went into practice and I was in the top 3, top 5, every exercise. And I realized I could have done this all along. I just didn't perceive myself as a leader. And I just slacked. I was good on the weekends, so I got to play.
Right.
But other than that, I did the least amount of work I could possibly do to stay on the team. I had some fairly good natural talent. But when he made me the captain and said, you have to set an example for everybody else. So you're going to have to lift weights harder, stay healthier, on and on and on and on, and come in for, top 5 in sprints. That's what the running backs and everything, which, by the way, I ended up becoming a running back at the end of the year.
Because empowering you.
Yeah. That changed and I really had to look back and realize that changed my life as far as the perception of not being the guy at the end of the pack, but being someone near the front that had to set an example for everybody at the end of the group.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a moment. What other individuals, like you talked about your dad, and what other influences did you have in your leadership path when you were young?
After I graduated, I went to work for the Rockefellers at one of their.
Oh, gee. Wow, that's interesting, huh?
And it's an International Rockefeller Foundation. It was a private foundation run by Winthrop P. Rockefeller III.
Okay.
And he assigned his right-hand man, a guy named Charlie Owen, to me as my mentor. And Charlie was awesome. And I got an education. We just said journalism school. I had no background in business, and I'd never led anything. I had a few small businesses when I was in college. But Charlie did a couple of interesting things. One, he would say, bring in a bag tomorrow. We're going to fly to, we did Alaska one time. And he said, we're negotiating to buy the entire Alaskan fishing fleet for $330 million cash. And this is in 1989. So $330 million was actually a fair amount of money.
Yeah.
And he'd say, sit in the back, don't say anything, take notes. So I'd sit there, watch the whole negotiation. He did this on multiple times.
How old was he about at the time?
It's funny because it seemed like he was 100, but I think he was only in his 40s.
Really?
Because he's probably in his 70s now, and I'm in my late 50s. So he was probably only 40, 45, something like that.
And you were like mid-20s?
26. By this time, 24. I just graduated. So he would bring me around all these meetings. Then he did something else that changed my life. Every Monday he'd walk in my office and put a business book on my desk. He'd say, I'll see you Friday for lunch at M's Home Cooking. At the counter, we'd go get his chili and have chili, and he'd have sweet tea. And we'd sit there and he would absolutely grill me. What was in the book? What were your top 3 takeaways? What do you think the author meant by this? I mean, he knew the books really well. And then he'd say, all right, John, and here was the big twist. He'd say, what are the 3 things you're going to do based on what you just learned? Not what did you learn, but what action will you take? I would tell him, he'd write that down and say, I'm now putting in that in your job description. You're going to be held accountable for it. Here's another book. So for
Wow.
6 years, every Monday, I got a business book, a couple of 100 pages. Every Friday, I had to make a pretty in-depth book report. But then he turned and said, now you have to change the way you lead. You have to change the way you run the company. Because they made me CEO when I was 26, and I was in way over my head. You and I were chatting earlier. I had no idea what I was doing. No. I just showed up every day, imposter syndrome.
Yep.
Every day going, one day they're going to figure out I'm making all of this up.
I don't know what I'm doing.
But I had a great team of really bright people. One of my proudest things of that is almost everyone that worked for me went on to own their own companies or become CEOs of other companies. And the whole staff.
John, that mindset, I don't know how it is for you. When I've thought back on those early days of my management in radio, I've thought to myself, I was smart enough not to try to do everything.
Right.
I was smart enough to say to other individuals, you got a lot more talent than I have in here. How can I help you?
Yeah.
And that was a key to being successful for me. I mean, I've always said, hire talented people and then let them be talented.
Yeah, Steve Jobs said the same, hire great people and get out of their way.
Yeah.
The realization came for me, because when I first became CEO, I was like, I got to make sure my hands are in everything. Everything's got to go right. And then one day I looked up and there was a long line of people in the hallway waiting to see me to make decisions. And I realized I was the bottleneck in the company. So I brought my team together and said, from now on, there's 4 levels of decisions. Level 1, you make it. You're fully delegated. This is what I hired you for. You're much better than me. You make it. You own the outcome, good or bad. Level 1. Level 2, go get some advice, probably not from me, maybe from marketing or the CFO or something. Then you make the decision and you own it, positive or negative.
Yep.
And after you've asked for advice 3 or 4 times, that should become a level 1 decision. You just make it. Level 3, it's a team decision. And we'll get the appropriate people, bring them all together. As a team, we'll make the decision. And as the CEO, I will back your decision even if I don't agree with it. If all of you say we want to go right and I go, I think we need to go left, unless it was something that would blow up the company, I'd say, okay, I'm going to trust all of you.
Let's do it.
If it goes great, you get all the credit. If it goes badly, I go to the board and say it was my decision, and I'll take full accountability. And then level 4 decision is, it's my decision. I might talk to you guys about it. We might discuss it. I might not say anything to you because I know something I've talked to the board or I know something that's coming on. But you have to trust that I can make that decision well. And what I've tried to teach or share with other leaders is, if you do enough of those level 3, where you're saying, I trust you, I trust you, I trust you, I trust you. When you very rarely do a level 4 and say, could you please trust me? Everybody says, no problem, put their head down.
Let's do it, yeah. And
it turned out that about 70% of the decisions I was making, I should not have been involved in at all.
That is amazing. I'm a big football fan. Mm-hmm. I've been watching, I'm a Detroit Lion fan and a Jaguar fan. You want to talk about, be a glutton for punishment. But I've been watching Hard Knocks, and what you were describing is a lot what Dan Campbell, the Lions coach, is portraying on this program, is that, trust me. He puts a lot of faith in his coaches, puts a lot of faith in his team, but there's been 1 or 2 times that trust me on this one, which is that level 4, which is really interesting to see. And there's a coaching tree that he comes from, where people like Bill Parcells and Sean Payton. So he is on those same thoughts. What is the coaching tree that you come from, as far as where you've picked up some of these ideas?
Picking up those ideas was almost all from reading. I read about 100 to 120 business books a year, and I have every year since 1989. So, wow. And here's what I learned. One of the reasons I failed out of college is I didn't read. I actually was a professor at Santa Fe here in town, a guy named Roger Strickland, that told me, he heard me saying, I have to get good grades, I want to go to U of F, blah. And he said, there's only 3 things it takes to be successful in college. Number 1, read the books. At least in college, 99% of the answers are in the books. Yep. I could do. Number 2, and this is the second most important thing I've learned in my life, ask for help. And go to the professors, go to the TAs, go to the career center, go to the other students. but constantly ask for help. And a lot of people, and I see this in leadership as well, think it's weak to ask for help.
Yeah.
The best leaders I've ever met, and I've had a chance to work with some of the top people in the world. I had 4 billionaires on my board, and everyone else was worth more than $100 million. Wow. And I had a chance to work with Apple and Mike, are always good at asking for help. Help, input, advice, suggestions, bring me anything to help make me better. And then the third thing he said is start study groups. And surround yourself with really talented people that are highly focused, high integrity, they want to get good grades, and help each other there. And that was really a changing moment that went from there. So he was part of the leadership tree, and being able to take the ideas I was learning. I know when I graduated, the answers aren't in the books, but the ideas to help me get to the answers are in the books. And this goes great with your Dale Carnegie training, is you have one of the brightest people who learned all these amazing things, puts it in a book, like How to Win Friends and Influence People. You can get it for free probably at the library if you wanted to, or buy it for $20. This is a life-changing book. I mean, it's his whole theory and philosophy in you can read it in 5 or 6 hours. Yep. A lifetime of knowledge in 5 or 6 hours. So I learned back then that I could learn from the smartest people in the world. And today it's podcasts, it's YouTube, it's all the other things, audiobooks, real books. Never in the history of mankind is so much.
Do you listen or read?
I like to read. It's interesting. I will listen to a book a little bit, and if I like it, I'll go buy the hard copy, read it, and underline it. I'm a strange person because part of my job is to read books and learn. So when I get a book, I read it and I underline it the whole way through, and then I've created special codes for myself. A pound sign, which we would call a hashtag now, that's a number I need to remember. Q is a quote. 1 star means reread it. R means reread again. So what I do is I go through the book, then I go back and reread the highlighting into audio, and I record it. Then I take the rereading and the audio, and I listen to that and reread it. And I've got a
you actually record your own voice reading the book.
And I will make comments to myself. I'll say, Jim Collins, good to great. We'll use the Stockdale paradox, which is you must look at the most brutal facts of your current reality without ever losing faith that you will persevere. Yep. And I'll say, okay, this reminds me of this story, and John and I talk to myself like, John, you need to remember this, and John, this is what we did at that company when we worked together. This exact thing, and when we work, I'd say we. And I'm talking to myself, but when we work here, we do that, and I'm constantly giving myself, in addition to the book, other ideas I throw in. Then I'll listen to that 4 or 5 times. And I pretty much got the stuff semi-memorized.
I love that idea. First time I've ever heard that.
I'm a freak, so
I like it. I'm going to copy that too.
Please do.
I do love reading. When my mom was still alive, she's the one that got me into reading, and not as adventurous as you are in the amount of books you read in a year. Yet I read a lot, and I tried to buy my mom a Kindle. Or a Nook, one of those things. And she absolutely refused. She said, I want to feel the paper.
Yeah.
I'm kind of the same way. I'll buy the book, and then if I really like it, I'll buy it on Audible. I do the opposite.
Okay.
I'll buy it on Audible and listen to it all the time. But I'm an underliner. I keep books on the floor. They don't go on a shelf until they get read.
My office is basically me and 3,000 books. Yeah. And my wife will come in every now and then and say, can't you get rid of a few of these books? I'm like, no, I might need it. She goes, really? I go, I can tell you where every book is. And I've got 13 bookcases in my office, which is a different place than my house. And she's like, there's no way you have this memorized. Like, ask me, book on marketing. It's over here, and I've got a semi-photograph from it. It's a purple thing, yellow words, Seth Godin, purple cow. Here it is, bam, pull it out. Yeah, and she'll go, I don't understand. Seriously, there's got to be something you can get rid of. I'm like, they're my babies.
Okay, what the dog saw?
Actually, that is right in my office, behind my shoulder, upper left-hand corner. And they're also got teaching your cat to bark, and there's a few of those other ones.
I love Malcolm Gladwell. What the Dog Saw was just one of my favorite books by him, and it's just
He's an interesting guy. I got to give a speech with him several years ago, and he is very focused and very introverted, but incredible. It's like Jim Collins. Jim Collins is quiet in real life, but man, when he starts to talk, he is so brilliant and so thoughtful and so well spoken.
Yeah, sometimes when I get in front of an audience, no matter how big, small it is, most of the time, 90% of the time, the brain is like totally focused. But there are so many things spinning around, or somebody asks a question and it opens up another door. And that's so tough to get back focused, Do it well. Yeah. People don't know.
Yeah. Well, somebody asked me the other day, what makes a really good speaker? And I said, when you know your stuff so well that it isn't rote, you aren't doing the exact same story every time, but you don't have to think about what you're teaching or talking about, which means you can focus completely on the audience.
Yep.
And if someone asks you a question, I can think that through because I don't have to try to remember what I was going to talk about. I use slides when I do large speeches, and my slide is just a picture. It may be one word. It's not for the audience. It's for me
for you
just to remember, okay, boom,
trigger,
and that's the next 4 or 5 minutes of stuff. But because I know it so well, I can really focus on, am I connecting with people? Are they nodding their heads? Are they good? Do I need to change the story here? Do I need to teach a different idea here?
Yeah. I love the feedback from the eyes in the audience. I just absolutely love that.
Well, look, they're really happy right now.
Yeah,
everybody.
Right. See right
See those eyes looking at us.
So tell me, you've gone through so many changes of not in yourself, but in the world. I mean, you started your own company 1980s?
Yeah.
1980s. How has technology shifted what you do as a leadership coach, author, speaker?
So dramatically, and then the pandemic accelerated it at an unbelievable pace. I mean, I used to travel 220 days a year worldwide. In 2019, I traveled 217 days. In 2020, I drove to Jacksonville for a meeting and back. That was it. I look back from the day I graduated from college, the longest I've ever been in one city at a time is 22 days without being on an airplane.
Wow.
This one, 579 days before my first airplane flight. However, my entire business went online. So it's interesting. Someone asked me, and I have another little story, quick story after this you'll get a kick out of, what's been great about the pandemic? That's a pretty fascinating. And I had to think about it for a minute because there's been an awful lot of really bad stuff. But I said, well, the thing now is I could talk to people all over the world every day. I'm writing a book with a co-author in Moscow. I've got a strategic partnership with some guys in New Zealand. I work a lot with folks in Canada. I've got a partner that I'm working with in India. And I've also reached out and connected with authors and folks that I look up to. I talked to Dan Rockwell yesterday, leadership freak, one of the top guys in the world. We've got a standing monthly call.
That's great.
Let's learn from each other. So the technology now has allowed me to, my customer base used to be who can I get to. Now it's, as long as they speak English, they're a potential customer. It's expensive to fly someone from the United States to New Zealand or Germany or whatever. That expense now has gone away at some level. That just like I was telling you, I did a speech for 1,000 people in Vietnam last weekend. Normally, although I'm going to be traveling to Vietnam for a couple of weeks in December to do some stuff live, I'm doing speeches to 1,000 people, sometimes two times in the same day. One in India in the morning and one in Vietnam at 11 o'clock at night. Totally impossible 5 years ago.
Do you sit, stand, or?
I have several sound-proof rooms like this. I've got 5 sound stages in my office. My office is completely soundproofed, light-proofed, everything. So if it's a formal one, teaching or something like that, I've got a stand-up room, 4 stand-up rooms.
That's
desks and things. Now, the one for Vietnam last week, you don't know that I'm wearing a very nice jacket, tie, everything else like that, shorts and tennis shoes. But the hard part about that is I'm all alone in my office. It was 11:30 at night, no one else there, every other room dark, and I'm standing looking at a little teeny camera trying to connect with 1,000 people on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
That has changed the dynamic as well, too.
Yeah, that is an amazing thing. I gave a talk to the Propeller Club for they're all over the world also. And it's amazing when you start saying, okay, it's 2:00 here, but it might be, 2:00 in the morning over here.
Yeah.
And to me, you and I spoke earlier, I'm always I'm not there for me. I'm there for my audience.
That's the way it should be.
Whoever that is. And to me, that they're sacrificing their sleep to listen to me, man, it's like prepare, be on point, be positive, be uplifting, enthusiastic.
Don't waste a minute of their time.
Not a second.
Yep. Give them everything you possibly can to help them get better. Well, that's what you and I have dedicated our lives to.
Yep.
So it's interesting because I was helping a friend yesterday that wants to become a consultant, and he said, "But it's so unique." And I said, "No, actually, it's all the same problems from a leadership or a business standpoint. The problems I see at Microsoft or Apple are the same problems a local startup has. It's just more zeros."
Yep.
Having challenging having dysfunctional leadership is the same at a $190 billion company, roughly as it is a $1 million company. There's just a lot more people that you lead poorly or well at a large organization.
Yeah. I've sat in some rooms, where I'm like, how did these people get here?
That's a question I asked myself, and a young lady that I work with gave me the answer I never thought of. And I've worked in a lot of Fortune 500 companies, and I see this in a few of them because of their culture, that the way you get ahead is to beat other people and to be more aggressive, more political, to hoard resources, to take credit for other people's work. And then you become, they see you as high potential, move you to the next level where you have to be more political, more aggressive, more controlling of resources, and you got to do more and more and more and more until you get to the top of the organization. And the reason those people got to the quote-unquote leadership positions is because they're incredibly aggressive, political, backstabbing, greedy, and it's the culture that builds that up. And we could look at something like Hubert Joly that ran Best Buy, that it was all about love and egalitarianism and take care of your people. I was doing some studying on this for a book I'm writing, and what I looked at the very best leaders do as they create strategy, number one strategy is get great people and build an awesome culture, then get those people to focus on the customer, then build the processes that allow them to do that, and that will drive your profit. The wrong ones go, we need to make as much money as we can, we'll build the process, we'll charge the highest amount we can to our customers, and I'm going to treat my people poorly.
Oh,
that doesn't work so good in the long run.
And not in any industry.
Yeah.
I saw that all the time in the radio business. I consulted some other radio stations just on the side while I was running my own. Friends that would call up and say, "Hey, Bob, can you come in here and take a look at what we're doing?" And it's hard to tell your friend, your problem is you.
Oh, that's the first question when I do executive coaching with someone is, and they start complaining about their staff is, well, what was your role in that?
Yeah.
Well, no, it's up there. I go, no. What part of this is yours? Yeah. And if I can get to 4 times they don't answer, I know there's no reason for me to be there.
Yep.
And they also go like, oh, they're going to go, who hired them?
Yeah.
Who leads them? You hired them. You're the one they work for.
You got it.
If they're not, well, I've got all these little phrases I use. As goes the leadership team, so goes the entire company. And it's one of the reasons I like to work with smaller companies is if you can make a big impact there. If they've got I was doing a strategic planning retreat for a company yesterday, 6 senior executives, 200 employees. Make some decisions in there that change the way the company goes. You change a lot of people's lives.
Shift it quickly. Boom.
Yeah.
They can make a pivot very fast.
Yeah. And you can, one of the things I love about this company, and you'll get is they make a lot of money, and the owners don't think about profit. You know what they think about? How many more people can we hire and take care of their families? The way they say, next year we get to hire another 60 people. That's another 60 families we can take care of. We can give them good employment. We can give them good benefits. We can give them a great place to work so that their life is better. Versus that's another $1 million in my pocket next year.
Yeah, I see that all the time. We're going to take a quick break here. Come back. Hold that thought because I want to come back to that. So
I'll hold that
on
thought.
To it. Right onto it. Just right in your hand. His name is John Spence. I'm Bob Ganzak. This is Motivation You, the podcast.
We still hear it. The sound of victory. The joy of being part of something great. And while things may not be the same right now, we haven't gone anywhere. If you bleed orange and blue, then Meldon Law is the firm for you.
Looking for more reasons to celebrate? We have them here at Celebration Point. Enjoy some of the newest additions to our already celebratory lineup, like Dave & Buster's, Les Macarons, and Prime and Pearl. There's always a reason to celebrate. Join us anytime for any occasion. Celebration Point, where Gators come to celebrate.
Welcome back to Motivation You, the podcast. My name is Bob Ganzak, and this is John Spence, and we're having a great conversation. Sometimes I think we should record what we're saying off the air as well as
the
on
stuff
the
at the
air.
beginning and during breaks is usually the stuff that's the best and the funniest.
Yeah.
So, which makes your audience now say, well, so this is the boring, unfunny stuff that we get to watch now?
Now, one of the things I've said to people before when I've given talks is that some of the greatest conversations are when somebody else is out there speaking and two or three of the other speakers that are coming up next are in the back talking.
Yeah.
Some of the greatest ideas come out there and move on. Before we went to break, we were talking about different, leadership in the, what should I say, 21st century now? I mean, as we blended through from one century to the next, and we were talking about technology. How has it changed your world when you're like, not just the Zoom area, but the way people respond to you?
You're going to have to ask that question in a better way, Bob.
Okay. All right. No, well, from my standpoint, I'll give you an example. Mm-hmm. I was telling, somebody asked me the other day, hey, Bob, who's the most famous person you've ever met? And right away, Muhammad Ali. And he goes, oh, yeah, all right. And I told him some of the stories that Muhammad Ali laying on the ground. We had a radio station. Mm-hmm. He was our charity basketball coach. He showed up to our games, sat on the bench, and helped us raise money.
That's awesome.
Here was the 31, 32-year-old young man.
Uh-huh.
He says to me, where's the photos?
I don't understand.
Doesn't believe you.
Oh, okay, now I get it.
Nowadays, everything is a selfie.
Yeah, we're going to get one before I leave to prove that I actually met you and got to spend time with you.
And I'm like, and I was like dumbfounded.
Yeah.
And I've seen that in leadership too, where people want to go, show me what it is. What did you do? Well, I ran X amount of radio stations. I've spoken to, all over 54 countries all over the world. Show me.
That's fascinating. I've never really looked at it that way. with me, I think a lot of the writing I do, blogs, books, things like that, help with the show me the credibility. They've read the blog, they've seen it, they've been able to judge the ideas. In the past, unless you wrote a book, you didn't have an audience. I've got 58,000 people that follow me just on LinkedIn, and so I would never have access to that audience for my writing, my ideas, things like that, short videos. Back then, now I can talk to 250,000 people
Just like that.
Yeah, and that's where someone says, I don't need to see the picture. I just I saw the idea, I read the idea, and if it came from this guy, he must be okay. And they'll look at my client list and things like, oh, okay, you work for some of these companies, you won a couple of awards, I guess he knows what he's talking about. But it's that ability to get your voice out. We're doing it right now.
Yep.
And prove to people by interacting with you through the written word or what you say or podcasts, to me, that builds some level of trust, maybe a connection a little bit, but definitely credibility.
And that, I also noticed something like the Gen X, they have more challenges. Again, I'm speaking generally, more challenges with Gen Z, where the boomers seem to have more challenges with the millennials. Which is really an interesting thing. I did a lot of the employee engagement workshops and studies in the Jacksonville area between 2012 and 2019. A ton of them was CSX, Northrop Grumman, a
All
bunch of
clients of mine.
great companies, right? Wonderful companies. And you see that where, the boomers look at the millennials differently than they look at Gen X and differently than they look at Gen Z. And I wonder why that is.
Well, it's an interesting fact that right now in many organizations we have 5 generations working together under the same roof. And, the experiences that made our lives, that were turning points, is a completely, you and I were probably the Iraq War when it started. Another generation is 9/11. An way older generation would be Pearl Harbor, Vietnam. And then you get up to, I guess now would be the pandemic and things like that. Shapes our thinking and the way we look at stuff in a different way.
Yes.
And we all have a unique prism that we look through based on, like, I have no idea what the impact of 2.5, 3 years of virtual learning is going to do to the kids that are coming up now. Their ability to interact with other people, their soft skills. Again, we talk about Dale Carnegie, some of the stuff you guys teach in there. I think it's going to be dramatically more necessary in the coming years because they missed 3 years of social interaction and have now switched to. I've got some younger folks that work with me, brilliant, very talented. Text is the only way they want to interact.
Yep.
And I'm like, could you call me or do a Zoom? Or
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's the changes in leadership because of the technology that is concerned.
The biggest challenge right now, not the biggest challenge, but one of the main things I've been looking at, and a lot of my colleagues are, how do you create culture at a distance? How do you, because culture is so critical to a successful company, and a lot of that is building trust and creating genuine connection and getting to know other people. During the pandemic, I had lots of people said, I've never met face-to-face any of the people I work with, and I've been working here 2 years. Never been in a room, never met them, never talked to them. Everything has been over Zoom. From a leadership standpoint, that is a completely different situation.
Go through think back through our high school years, or like you went to the same school from kindergarten through high school. So take like periods, 2.5 years. What would have happened if you missed 4th through the beginning of 7th grade, not interacting with kids? What would have happened if you would have missed 9th through 11, halfway through 11th grade, not interacting with kids?
That'd be devastating.
But think about that. We have generations that have done that.
Yeah.
And we don't, like you said, we don't know what it's going to mean down the road.
It's going to have an impact at some level. There's no way it can't. I just don't know what it's going to be. I think it's going to be impacting their social skills, maybe their ability to work well with people in other groups and things like that. I just don't know.
But it's going to be different from the people that missed kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, and then the ones that missed 10th, 11th, and 12th.
Yeah.
You know, because they got to experience kindergarten, first and second.
Yeah.
They don't get to where these kids are going to get to experience that.
Yeah.
You know, so
I look at it and say I feel the worst or the most concerned about the 10, 11, 12, or the folks that missed their graduation, their junior and senior year. Mm-hmm. I look back; those were incredibly pivotal times in my life. And if that was taken away, yep. It would have changed the person I am. Yeah. And I'm sure it's gonna have an impact on all of them.
I think that through, and it's just amazing. And I also think about the parents that, you know, when my kids were 4 or 5, you know, I had certain things that I could interact with other parents in doing that, and all of a sudden they didn't.
Yeah.
You know, so what is that going to shift their thinking when they're, you know, maybe in their mid to late 40s and their kids are, you know, 18, 19 years old?
Yeah.
You know,
and also, let's look at a leadership standpoint, a business standpoint, is we're never going back to working in the office.
Only.
The company I was with yesterday is a tech company, and I asked them how many of your folks have come back, or how many of your folks are still remote, because they have a you could do whatever you want to. Come in if you want to work, stay at home. They said 85% are still at home. Mm-hmm. Now, if they had an ice cream social, almost the entire staff showed up. You know, because they do want to see each other. Yep. They have a chili cook-off. Almost everybody shows up, but then they don't show up for a month until the next event. They don't want to be in the office. They want to work, at some level, you and I have been our own business owners for 30 years. The idea of being able to go with a bunch of my friends to a workspace, hang out with them, do my work on my stuff, they do their work, then we go to lunch together, hang out, or go do something, and spend time with the people I want to spend time with.
Right.
That's a pretty attractive situation.
It very much is.
Yeah.
And some of these companies, you know, the employees that knew each other, and then when they were separated during the pandemic, they decided not to go back. That's going to be a little different than companies that never work together. My daughter works for a company, Articulate, which is they build platforms for training.
Okay.
And they have, I think, 450 employees, all never have had any brick and mortar.
Yeah.
They work totally from their homes or wherever they decide to work from.
Yeah.
And so they didn't have a lot of change during the pandemic.
It's unfathomable to me to think of a 400-person company where no one's ever met each other face to face.
So they used to once a year would have they would like go to San Antonio, go to San Francisco, where everybody came there and they took over a hotel and they had a week together. They worked and they got to know each other. So there was some of those boundaries, but my daughter lives on Zoom. You know,
I get a real. I was going to tell
whatever.
You this story earlier, and I've been holding on to it. Let's say in 1992, when I was at the foundation, laptops had just been invented.
Wow,
scary, isn't it? And I told my senior staff, work wherever you want to, whenever you want to. As long as what you owe me is on my desk on the day it's due. Let's just say Friday, and it's world class. It's truly world class. I don't care where you work or when you work. And we had a young lady that worked for us that was a national surfing champion before she got to us. If we had our office in Fort Lauderdale, go surf. You know, come in later, have Chinese food with your husband, and do whatever you want to do. Get at work. My CFO used to go play golf during the week. Actually, his rule was, I will not tell you about the financials unless we're on the golf course. And this is 1990, 92. One of my board members came in and said, you can't do that. It doesn't work that way. He was in his 60s back then, so he had come up through the World War II generation command and control. He said, we're going to put a time clock in, and everybody has to clock in, everybody. So I asked our front office person that greets people, what's that person named? I can't think of it.
Oh, receptionist?
Receptionist. Clock everybody in the entire company in at 9. Just stand there, ching, ching, ching. Then clock everybody in the entire company out at 5. Ching, ching, ching. And we sent him the report. He goes, everyone in your company signed in 10 seconds apart. And
they waited in line.
I said they're very prompt, but we were doubling or tripling the size of the company every year, and he couldn't fight the results. I said, "Oh no, they're just incredibly prompt. They stand in line, ching, 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 ching. Everybody's happy." And he shook his head at me like you are.
That is awesome.
Can't argue with results. But that was 30 years ago. I think we were probably one of the first companies to go, work wherever you want to work. Be virtual. I don't care. As long as the work's done and it's great. Well, the two folks that work with me now, one's in Madrid and the other one's in LA. Which is another thing with the pandemic I realized is the world is your talent pool.
Yes, it is.
I've got a client that's based in Vancouver who just hired 10 people in Egypt because the people there are highly skilled, know the skill, and to hire someone in Vancouver to do that job is about $100,000. Hire somebody in Egypt to do is about $22,000, and they're very happy with that salary. That changes the way
reality.
Business runs. Yeah,
that's
changes
reality.
the way a business runs.
And somebody out there will say, "Well, why aren't you hiring? That's not fair to the people that are making $100,000." It's just I've got to run my company. I've got to run it through my numbers.
Yeah, it's what's going to change the way those people do work. They're going to have to consult and do things. So, example with that would be if I was making $100,000 to do this job, I would have to go out and get 3 clients or 4 clients, all paying me $30,000, $40,000, or I'd have to be so good at a unique thing that no one else could do. So I can't get someone in Egypt to do the work you're doing because you're the only one that has that skill set or that experience or that network or those connections. So it was somebody asked me once, how did you handle things when you were so young at the foundation? Steve Martin had a great quote years ago. When he went into the comedy industry, he was way too sophisticated. He's one of those comedians, which I love, will tell the intro to a joke at the beginning of the set and the punchline almost at the end. And if you're not sophisticated enough to be able to hold that thought all the way, and his agent came and said, you'll never do it. You'll never make it. You're way over the audience's head. He said, no, I will. I'm just going to be so good they can't ignore me.
Yep. Be so good that they can't ignore you.
That's the key to me.
Yep. That is really interesting. When you were talking about working remotely back so many years ago and letting your people do it, was interesting. One of the men that had a huge impact on my life was Dave Upton. Dave Upton and Steve Upton basically owned the radio station that I worked for in Benton Harbor, Michigan. Dave and Steve's grandfather or father and uncle started Whirlpool. So the Upton family from Whirlpool. And when they let the general manager go before me, he came to me and he said, look, I'm buying you a membership at the country club and I'm paying for it, everything. Your job is to use it. Because you do me no good in the office. I need you out in public. And I loved golf, so it was like, whoa. But you can't play a lot of golf in the winter, in Michigan. So I had to find other things to do to interact and start organizations, get involved in the board of directors and do. That was such an important leadership thought to me because everybody I'd worked before that, don't go to the golf course. Don't do this. Don't do that. You got to be in the office. You got to.
Not in that job.
We got to be out in public.
Right.
So that was so impactful in my world at that time.
I'll give you a fun, interesting story. Is the way I became the CEO at the foundation was I was doing the marketing, public relations, everything else, and I was on a trip to the Virgin Islands. It's like you love to play golf. The foundation I ran was called the Billfish Foundation. Mm-hmm. We did scientific research on marlin, swordfish, sailfish. So my job was to fly around the world to fishing tournaments, raise money, talk to large donors, talk to governments about fishing regulations, fly on private jets, play golf, go fishing, lay on the beach and drink rum drinks. That was my goal when I graduated from college.
In your 20s?
In my 20s. When I was graduating, I said, I want to get a job, and I've done this my entire career in companies I've built and stuff, where I get paid to do what I would do on vacation. That was and at that particular time, fishing, golfing, suntan, drinking, pretty much what I wanted to do. So we're down in the Virgin Islands, and the new CEO is there, and we have tons of major donors there, very big. And I come back one day and I've got like 26 voicemails in my hotel room. And he's, I'm in my room working on a strategic plan, and I need you now. Where are you? So I throw my golf, glove in my back pocket. I've still got my cleats on. I run down there, and I knock on the door. Where the hell have you been? I said, I've been playing golf all day. You're fired. And I went, okay. And I turned around and went back to my room and packed. And I stopped by Mr. Rockefeller's yacht on the way out of town. And his captain was Mike Lim, and I knocked on the door of the yacht, and I said, Mike, can I just talk to Win for a minute? And sure, when Mr. Rockefeller came in, I said, Win, I just want to know it's been a pleasure working for you. It's been an honor. And
wow.
I appreciate the opportunity. And he said, what happened? I said, David fired me. And he said, why? I said, because I was playing golf all day. And he goes, who are you playing golf with? And I went through the list, and he said, that's like $3.5 million worth of our donors right there. What's your job, John? I said, Director of Development, Marketing, Public Relations. He goes, isn't that what we pay you for? Why? Where was he all day? And I said, in his hotel room doing the strategic plan. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a jet brought around. I'm going to fly you back to Miami. Your first job when you get back is when he gets back is to fire him. And you, son, will be the CEO. And it was funny because we went into the meeting room. This guy's in his mid-50s, and I'm 26. And we go back to the boardroom, and I'm sitting at one end of the table, and Mr. Rockefeller and Charlie Owen, his right-hand man, are standing at the other end. And Mr. Rockefeller goes, David, have a seat here at this end of the board thing. And he turns around and looks, and I'm the only one. He goes, no, look at John. He keeps looking at me. He goes, no, look at your boss. And the look on his face was like, what do you mean? I said, David, it's been a pleasure working with you. But that was it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, but you are paid to be on the golf course. You are paid to be with our donors, not sitting around your office. We're not sitting in your hotel room working on the strategic plan. That's something you're supposed to be doing back at the house. So I got fired for playing golf.
And in my situation, the radio station I was hired to hadn't made any money. Hadn't been part of the community at all for years, and all of a sudden we were involved in everything, and business just took off. And it's just a matter of going out and interacting with people.
Well, let's come back to the folks listening. That's one of the keys to success: mastermind groups, having a great network. One of my favorite things to say to my clients is, if you ever need any help, let me know. And if I don't have the answer, I can find somebody who does. And I can. I pick up the phone and call somebody who calls somebody. I'm probably 2 jumps away from pretty much anybody in the world. Not because I'm brilliant or smart or anything, but because I've built that network over the years where if I need some help, one of my closest friends runs a couple of companies for Warren Buffett. If I really need to get to Warren Buffett, I could call Vic and he could get me there. Now, I haven't pulled that chip.
Right.
I don't need it. But if I needed it, I can get to somebody. And again, it's not because I'm special. It's just because I've spent years building that network of really smart people. Here in Gainesville, I have a mastermind group of a bunch of CEOs from here in town. And before the pandemic, they'd come to my house about once every 45 days. And we'd have a couple of glasses of wine and hors d'oeuvres, then go to my back deck. And for 3 hours, drill each other. What did you learn? What are you seeing? We'd have book reports. Just like Charlie, I'd sign everybody a book. We'd all come and do a book report, or we'd have one of them teach us about their industry and their business, or one of them come and say, I have this really bad problem in my office. Can you help me with it? But we had that group of
That's
talented,
amazing.
smart. Yeah, it's life-changing.
Yep.
It's a lot of, again, I keep coming back because I know you do the Dale Carnegie thing. It's that group that you go through that class with, and the other folks that are graduates that become a network of like-minded people.
Yeah, Freddie and I were talking about that just, I think over the weekend. We were Freddie Wiebe.
Yeah.
We were just talking about that, connecting with other people. You start, you got to ask questions, and you just get involved. And sometimes, the person that you meet today and that you really listen to has no opportunity for interaction within what you're doing. 3, 4, 5 years down the road, all of a sudden their job shifts, and they call you up and they say, hey, John, are you still doing? Yes. Well, I'm now the CEO of.
That's how a lot of my business comes. I have a great story to tell you about Freddie that is a perfect example of this. Years ago, he owned all the Gator Dominoes.
Yep.
And when he sold that business, he wasn't quite sure what he wanted to do. And he had a couple opportunities to go to marketing for major sports teams around the state, and some other great opportunities, and the opportunity to do this project, Spurrier's. And he picked a handful of people in town, I think it was 8 or 10 or 11 of us, and said, can I take you to breakfast or lunch? And he said, what should I do? Here's my opportunity, I could do this. Here's the other opportunity, I could do this. I could build this restaurant in town. And I sat and listened, and my advice was, you've been an entrepreneur for years, you've run everything. Do you want to go and be in the 4th level of management in another company where you don't get to make any decisions? I don't think you'd be happy there. And he listened to a whole bunch of us and then made up his own mind, and we all said roughly the same thing. But here's someone who's exceedingly successful, very talented, incredibly bright, and to make a major decision in his life, he said, I need help.
Yep.
Let me go talk to a bunch of people I know in town that I respect or like or admire, or whatever it might be. And all that feedback gave him, and do you think he made the right decision? I think so.
I would say we're sitting in that right decision now.
We're sitting in that right decision right now. Right person for that, dedicated, did an incredible job, but was vulnerable enough or honest or authentic enough to say, I need some help with this
all
decision.
All of those words, vulnerable, transparent. That is what leadership is.
Agreed.
I think, what is the outcome when you're coaching somebody? When you talk to them about what is the outcome of their leadership, what kind of answers do you hear, and where do you try to guide people?
Well, I've been asked a question a lot about what is leadership and what's the definition. Mine is when you become a living example of what you hope your people will one day become. So if you want bright, talented, sharp people that are lifelong learners, that live with integrity, that have strong personal core values, that always tell the truth, that are motivated, excited, that you have to be that.
Yeah, you have to live that.
You have to live that and do this sort of thing. It's one of the things I love about leading companies is it forces me to be a better person than I actually am. I can't lose my temper. I don't that much anyways, but I can't lose my temper. I can't, I can use a lot of profanity. But my point is I have to I don't mask it, but I have to be in a pretty good mood. I have to be fair and honest. I have to be curious. I have to ask a lot of questions and listen and do the things that I know will be the kind of leader that I hope the folks that work with me will become. As I said earlier in the show, one of my greatest accomplishments or happiness is looking back and seeing that everybody I worked with at the foundation have all gone on to start their own companies or lead other companies. I'm proud of the fact that those folks were able to grow, and now they're helping other folks.
Yeah, that is. I've always looked at it as unleashing the potential in others. Really, that's what our role is. As leaders, is when you can walk the walk, talk the talk, but when you're able to open up that, it's like a can opener. You're able to open it up, and that person grows. And that's what I love.
You've just described the way I look at my job. Is I feel like I carry this big key ring around, and someone goes, I can't get through this door. My business, I can't get through this door. And I put the key in for them and open it and open the door. I don't know if I can open the next door and the next door, but at least this one I had the key to. And I've seen so many businesses fail because it was an easy door to get through. They just didn't have the key and they didn't know it. Not because they're not smart, it's just they didn't have access to that information.
You know what door to open.
Yeah.
Which is important. A lot of people will try to open that 4th door.
Yeah.
You got to open the first one first, walk through it, then open the next one, and that's what the Dale Carnegie class does.
Exactly.
It's, when we worked with Northrop Grumman, it was their foundation class. And
as it should be.
And it builds on to other things. So I do get an opportunity to plug the class right now. Because
would you like me to do it for you? No.
Please do. It's coming up September 13th.
No, it's a life-changing course. I still read the books, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and then I always get the title of How to Stop Worrying and Start Living.
Yes.
Boom. I've read them 3 or 4 times. It was pivotal in my life, but here's what I'll say, and we talked about this earlier. We had a young man that was in my class back then that came in, couldn't look you in the eye, couldn't talk to you, stared at the floor, scared, sat all alone, and after all that class, he came out of his shell. He was a changed person, and I know it changed his life. And I'm a huge fan of Dale Carnegie. I'm not just saying it because you're teaching, you're about to plug it, but my father insisted I go through it. I mean, one of the most successful malpractice attorneys in the country. He went through Dale Carnegie, and he said, "You will do this, period, because it will change your life." And he was right. So now plug the course, please.
Coming up at Hotel Indigo here at Celebration Point, September 13th. You can go to jacksonville.dalecarnegie.com to register. Just find a course, plug in there, put in your information, and join us. September 13th, 6 to 9:30, Hotel Indigo here at Celebration Point. John, it's been a pleasure.
It's been my honor.
I told you, 1 hour goes way too quick. Just way too quick. I'd like to do this again. I'd love to be able to spend some time just talking leadership. I mean, I had all these questions. I never got to them.
I can make up answers later.
I can make up more questions, too. I appreciate it very much. Thank you for being here. The work that you've done, please plug your website, please.
Just johnspence.com. It's very innovative, huh?
Yeah.
That is innovative.
And books?
Awesomely Simple is the one I would recommend. It's a very, very hands-on overview of how to run a successful organization. Lots of tools, checklists, questions, and I look at the 6 key things that all the successful companies I've worked with consistently do. And I think that's the only time I've ever plugged my book in an interview. I normally don't talk about it at all. So
really, I'm glad you did.
Thank you.
Glad you did. And I love that idea. And the one huge takeaway that I've taken is read that book, record your reading, and then listen to yourself over and over with the little notes in it. I love that idea. I will start that.
Thanks, Bob. Good.
Coming to you live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, this has been Motivation You the Podcast. I am so pleased to have John Spence here today. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Motivation You the Podcast.